Hello and welcome back to another one of my little paintings. It's Christmas in 2 days, so I figured I would paint a little snowman. So here's this little chap here. Right, so I'm going to start with a small brush, little sort of spotter miniature painting, size 1, and I'm using some turquoise blue. I'm just starting with a few little squares. I'm going to really put the scarf in. You could start with the actual snowman shape, but I'm just going to jump straight in with the scarf. So you can see it's just coming around the neck there, and now I'm thinking of the fold where it will tie, and then the tails of the scarf will drop down. And I'm just going to be putting all those little blocks in one at a time, just picking out the general shape. Quite like this turquoise blue. It's one of my favourites at the moment, and it's not technically a Christmassy colour, but I figured I would just go with it. I'm going to match it with a lovely green as well, so I'm just putting a bit darker paint in there. Some of these blocks are darker than others, but I'll even them up as we go along. I think that's going to be the last one of that tail. I'm just putting little sort of tufty bits down like you find at the end of the scarf. And they're going to move on, and this is where it continues around the snowman's neck. It's a bit dark, that paint, so I'm just going to balance it up with some of the other squares. It's always nice to add a little bit of shadow in, because the fabric folds as it's twisted around the neck, so there will be sort of ridges and funnels where shadows will appear. Some bits will be darker than others. Okay, and then another little square, finishing off the neck on that side. Okay, just evening up the colours there. I'm just using standard watercolours here. I quite like the block ones where you have to use the water to sort of ease the paint off and then create the thickness that you like. But obviously you can get them as liquid watercolours these days too, and pencils. And I've noticed that there's these fancy new brushes that have actually got water in the handle of the brush. Not quite sure how they work. I haven't been brave enough to try them. Okay, I'm carrying down the other side of the scarf now. There's a little sort of kink in it there as I'm bringing that tail further round. A little bit more paint. There we go. And down a little bit further. I don't like the two ends to be too even. I think I'm going to put my little tufty taily bits on the end of that one. Okay, now I've switched to the green. Now the contrast isn't too obvious at this stage, but it will show up as we put more colour in. Just a slightly different shade. More of a jade green, which actually close up looks really nice against this turquoise blue. So filling in the gaps there. Okay, that's the neck done. And now the second tail of the scarf. Nearly done now. Okay, there we go. That's the basic of the scarf done. Just going to even up some of the colours. Put a little bit of darker green in. Make sure there's no gaps. A little bit more shadow, and we're nearly done with the scarf. So we're now going to think about the next bit of our snowman. Got some black on the end of my brush now. I'm going to start putting in a smiley mouth, I think. Traditionally the mouths are pieces of coal, and I'm making mine nice and shiny by putting a little bit of a highlight on the top of each one. Always worth remembering where your light is coming from in the picture and making sure the shadows are always on the same side. A couple of eyes. I'll go back over these with a darker black later. I'm just really popping them in as a trial at this point. There we go, looking smiley. And probably the next thing we need is a nose. So a little bit of orange for the carrot. So we can start with the base of the carrot and then move it off and away. And make sure that we have a little highlight on the top of it. Just there. So there we go, nice pointy carrot. Okay, next bit of our snowman. We're going to give him a hat. Not a traditional bobble hat. I've decided to go for something a little bit more stylish. My snowman, or snow person as he probably should be referred to, he or she or they, is going to be wearing a little bit more of a sort of stylish cowboy type hat. There we go. So that's the brim, and that's the back side of the brim, leaving a gap for where the snowman's head will be. Okay, and then we're going up and across and down again the other side. Now I've left a little gap between the brim and the top section of the hat because I'm going to be putting in a matching band that coordinates with my snow person's scarf. I'm just putting a little bit of shadow into the hat at the moment though, remembering that the highlight needs to be the same side of the painting as the highlights in the eyes that I've put on the snowman's face a couple of minutes ago. There we go, a little bit of a highlight there. And in comes the lovely turquoise blue in the centre of the band to match up with the scarf. And then a little bit of green either side. Obviously you can switch these colours out with your favourites. You might want to have a purple and a pink scarf, or a rainbow coloured scarf, or whatever really you know, suits how you're feeling. I was thinking blue and green at the moment, but next time I might go yellow and orange. Any combination works. It's entirely up to you. This is your painting. You can do it your way. So this is, now I'm putting in the snowman's buttons, very similar to the eyes and the mouth, the bits of coal, remembering to pop the highlight in. You can have as many buttons as you like. I'm going to go for 3. I often find when I'm painting that odd numbers work a lot better than even numbers. And in fact, with the mouth, I think I've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 coals for the mouth. So next we're putting in the arms. Obviously I'm going to be making these to look a little bit like twigs. So I'm using quite a dark brown here, almost a burnt umber type. And then a few extra little sticks coming off the twig as a hand. And then I've put a thinner layer above so that you can see a little bit of highlight running down the stick arm. And we've got one arm pointing down and the other one is going to be raised as if our snowman is waving to us. Again, using the same dark brown, a few extra sticks coming off it, and then a little line above to suggest that there's a bit of a highlight there. So those are the main components of the snowman, apart from the snow. I think I'm going to put a little bit of shadowing in under the hat there. Oh no, I'm going in with the blue. Right, so this is ultramarine blue, but it's a very, very pale suggestion of it. And I'm just going to be popping touches in to suggest snow. Now my snowman's neck is a little bit thick, but that doesn't matter because snowmen can be all shapes and sizes. But I'm basically popping a little bit of blue on and then smudging, just a suggestion, so that the edge of the snow, the shape of the snow person is just picked out with that lovely ultramarine blue. I'm not putting any sort of really thick lines in, they are just touches and then smudged to fade out. Now down the body. I'll do the same all the way down the body. We're going to have a fairly lumpy, unusual shape that's just generally sort of upright. Goes in a little bit at the middle, but not really very much, and then keeps getting wider down to the ground. Keep putting in extra little touches of that lovely, lovely ultramarine blue. There we go. That's down one side. Right. Touch up the neck there, and then start coming down the other side. Lovely. Not really suggestive of any sort of gender here, just a sort of a snow person-y type shape. Again, coming down wider towards the ground. You can have some darker bits, some lighter bits, and then of course we need a lot of snow around about the base. Just little dabby motions with that little brush and ultramarine. Suggestive that there's more there than I'm actually painting in. I always like the sort of painting where you make a suggestion and then the viewer's eye puts the rest in. It's much more fun that way. And I think it's worth bringing in maybe another shade as well. A little bit of purple possibly. Have a little think about that. I'm still using the ultramarine at the moment, but I'm thinking maybe bringing in a little bit of light pink or purple. A few more highlights there. Again, in the underside of things and away from the main light source. And there's just a touch of pink going in there as well. These two colours work incredibly well together if you're painting snow with watercolours. Just a light sort of pinky purple and that light ultramarine. Just adds an extra dimension to the shadows and the overall feel of snow, really. It lifts it from being terribly, terribly cold, because too much blue can be quite a cold tone. So there's a bit more dark going in there on the far side of the snowman, where he's casting a shadow away from the sunshine. It's very subtle sort of shading going in from pretty much the midpoint round of the snowman, because that's where the majority of the shadows will be. But we're very nearly finished now. A few more dark shadows, I think, to just add a little extra. Under the brim of the hat would be quite dark, I think. So I've gone with that burnt umber that I've used for the twigs for that. And then back in to touch up the colours around the brim. And now I've gone back in with a much darker version of my black. I usually find when I put the first layer of black on, it always tends to fade out and become a little bit grey. So going back in and adding a bit more makes it stand out that much better, which is, you know, always really nice for eyes, I think. There's my little snowman's eyes going in, and then back round the coals of the mouth, and he's very nearly finished. 。 bit more shading on the hat. And you can keep adding to this for as long as you want, really, until you feel that it's ready. I think mine's very nearly finished. I'll put a much darker brown under the brim, I think, and then I will probably call it a day. There we go, much darker. And the effect of this shadow is quite important, really. It will really make the hat look very 3D on the head there. So we're very nearly done. And if anybody else is involved in the winter holidays at the moment, I hope you have a lovely time. I hope you enjoyed watching that. Maybe you want to have a go yourself. When you finish, don't forget, it's always a good idea to sign your name. Happy holidays, everybody.